Hi, this is Sue. I'm in the kitchen. And today we are cooking sour cream coffee cake. This recipe is much loved, given to me by my sister Sheila from out in California about 30 years ago. It's totally delicious. Seems so simple, but when you make it, you're going to say to yourself, why can't I buy this, something like this from a bakery? It's really good. I encourage you to try this. Okay, so we're going to begin by washing our hands. Again, so important, we need 20 seconds of hand washing. Then we're going to set the oven to 350 degrees. And we're ready to begin. The first step is to make the main part of the cake. There are 5 ingredients: a yellow cake mix, the most basic cake mix you can find. Yes, a box mix. Instant vanilla pudding. 8 ounces of sour cream. A half cup of vegetable oil. And 4 large eggs. I start with the dry ingredients first. And I simply put them in, you'll need a mixer for this. You simply put them in the bowl, one on top of the other. Yellow cake mix, the instant vanilla pudding, then the sour cream, 8 ounces, use a little spatula to get it all out and on top. Scrape it all out. Half a cup of vegetable oil. And use this to break your eggs in. I do them one at a time in case a shell gets in there. And just check and dump. 4 large eggs. My oven is ready. That's good timing. And the last egg. So far, so good. No shells. And we're good. We're going to take this and put it in our mixer. You're going to mix it on low for 5 minutes. Just let it do its own thing. You don't really have to do much with it. So set it in your mixer, turn your mixer on to low for 5 minutes. As it goes, you're going to prepare your dish. This is very important. You need to grease and flour your Angel Food pan. So what I do is I take a little bit of butter, microwave it for 10 seconds. I'm going to pour it into the pan, grease the pan, and then flour. As before, I use my little plastic bag to move the grease around in the pan. There's my butter, pretty much melted, but not fully melted. I'm going to pour it in the pan. take my gloved hand, my plastic bag, and my batter's mixing up. I'm going to grease, very importantly to remember to grease the inside and all the sides of the pan. One mistake I made when I first made this was I didn't put enough grease and flour, so it was difficult to get it out of the pan. So don't worry about putting a little extra. I use butter. So there's the grease. Next is the flour. I shake it on the center of the stem to get that covered first. And then I move it around and shake it to cover the bottom. And then lastly, I shake it to cover the sides. Excess I pour in. And then I need a little bit more. I have 3 minutes left on my batter. So this looks pretty good, it's ready to go. I'm going to then take the excess flour and bang it. So we've got a pan all set to go. About 2 more minutes. What's going to go into the sour cream coffee cake, except for those ingredients, is that we're going to make this crunchy layer that's in the middle and then is on the top. So I do a half cup of sugar, a half cup of chopped walnuts. I do a teaspoon of cinnamon. Oops! A teaspoon of cinnamon, a tablespoon of flour, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a tablespoon of warmed butter. Room temperature. Okay. Couple more minutes on that. I'm going to take and mix this crunchy layer up so that it becomes like sand. Okay. Pressing the butter through, mixing the sugar and the nuts, the flour, and getting it all mixed up with that vanilla on there. Okay, so here's our ingredients for the crunchy middle and top. I have a little extra butter on the side there. Let's take and crunch that in. Get right down to the bottom. And we're good there. The batter's done. Gonna let that drip for a minute more. Take my fork through and make sure my nice crunchy middle layer and topping is all mixed in well together. It is. We have that set ready to go, and now we're going to take a spatula, take the excess batter off the mixer, because it's so delicious, you want to make every little bit count. And I like to remove this just to make it extra easy to get my batter out. You're going to take half the batter and pour it into the pan. It doesn't have to be exact. You just want to kind of eyeball it. Don't measure it out. I check to make sure it's all mixed through, which it appears to be. And we're going to pour just a little bit around the bottom and stop it. Then I use a fork to spread it evenly on the bottom so that the whole bottom of the pan is covered. Now, if you didn't pour enough, you can pour just a little bit more and move it around a bit. Okay, that looks good. the next thing you do is take about half of your crunchy goodness that you just mixed up, and you take about half of your mixture here and you're going to sprinkle it in on top of the batter. This is going to make that nice swirly layer when you cut the cake. This cake is good for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or anything in between. All right, now I'm going to take the fork and move it around so that we can get an entire covering. It's like when you slice this cake, you don't want to have a section of it that doesn't have the crunchiness in it. And then lastly, you're going to take the remainder of your batter and circle it around to finish off the cake, and then you'll top it with your crunchiness. I try to make use of every bit of what's in the pan. So spatulas are awful good for this because this is kind of a thick cake batter. It's not thin. It's, as you can see as I'm working it, it's thicker. And you try to take advantage of every bit of batter that you have. Looks pretty good. And now spread it around so that you cover up the layer before of your crunchiness. Kind of like painting. And I go to the edges of the pan as well as the edge of the center of the pan, that little cone. Then you take, so this is what it looks like. Then you take the remainder of your topping, your mixture topping, and just sprinkle it around. And I use the fork to help, ooh, lots of it, to top the cake. I have made this without nuts. It's just as good. Walnuts are usually what I use if I make it. And here's your cake. Ready to go into the oven, 50 to 55 minutes at 350. So we'll go ahead and we'll put that in the oven. And we'll set the timer for 55 minutes. Okay. When the cake is ready to come out, you're going to use those oven mitts. And you are going to bring the cake out and let it set for 10 minutes while it's still in the pan. Using your oven mitts, you retrieve that cake from the oven and place it on your cooling rack. Let it set for 10 minutes, and I always set a timer for this. When 10 minutes has passed, I am going to take a sharp knife, using my oven mitts, a sharp knife, and go around the edge of the cake, loosening the cake from the side of the pan. I also do this with the inside cone and make sure that it's loose. Then I take an everyday old dinner plate and slide this over, hold the plate, and flip. If the cake is not coming out, tap it a little bit, and there you have your coffee cake. But wait, we're going to flip it and let it cool properly on the cooling rack. Once the coffee cake is cool to the touch, but it's really delicious to eat it warm, you can transfer it over onto that plate. So the slide it right over and transfer it onto the plate. And now we're ready to cut it and see what the inside of this cake looks like. Let me get a towel so we can pull out our first piece and take a look. And there you have the sour cream coffee cake. I'll post the recipe for this online. It's great warm, it's great, as I said, for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It's easy to make and very delicious. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next week.